It's time for another Out of Bounds Rewind with Bo Bounds on ESPN 105.9, The Zone.
Okay, let's go to Dak. Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider, PFF.com. I want to talk about where he needs to improve and what you like. Let's start, though, on what he needs to do. Where does he need to improve as a quarterback, Steve?
Yeah, I think Dak is he's just solid all around, right? He hits open throws, and I always say hits open throws as if it's not this easy thing to do. It's what the best quarterbacks do at a high level. So he does that well. He doesn't miss a ton of throws. I think for Dak, for me, it's always been when he has to take over a game, right? So I know early last year we started to see signs of that. I know they lost a bunch of games with Dak last year, but we started to see signs of, okay, when Zeke isn't running the ball 25 times, when it isn't a play-action-centric attack, and even last year, a lot of those, like, hey, they're down 25 points, and he's just, chucking it left and right against maybe a soft defense. But I want to see Dak be able to take over games, games where you have to drop back 40 times and the ball's in your hands, right? The defense has taken away the run, and you have to make decision after decision after decision. Short game, intermediate game, drop a deep ball in there, here and there. He can do all of that stuff, but putting it all together, I think in individual games is the thing I want to see. I want to see a Dak-driven offense, not one where people are saying, yeah, but they had Zeke and this offensive line and they ran the ball a ton and it's all play action. I want to see a Dak-driven offense because that's, I think, what separates the good and great quarterbacks in the NFL.
How much of people talk about how Linehan, the OC early, and Jason Garrett, who may or may not have been conservative, hasn't, and even Kellen Moore, I'm not sold on him, you are, but you know more than I do, that they've kind of handcuffed him. They haven't allowed him to do as much as he can do and some of these other guys who can extend plays. How do you see that part of it, Steve?
Yeah, there's always a balance, obviously. I think Kellen Moore's done a pretty good job because you can only put the quarterback in position to succeed with play action, with motion, with generally just knowing, having some anticipation of what the defense is going to throw at the offense. I think Kellen Moore's been fine in that area. And there is a tough balance between, letting the quarterback take over versus, holding him back a little bit. I just know this, though. The best quarterbacks know how to adjust to the situation.
Absolutely.
Whether the play call's there or not. I mean, again, I always cite Brady as great. I mean, Brady has succeeded in every possible situation as far as a 3 wide receiver offense, a spread offense, a 2 tight end offense, a run heavy offense, Bruce Arians offense, which is completely different from what he had in New England. He's adjusted to the situation, and he also adjusts to the game flow, right? There's times when you'd say, oh, Brady just dinks and dunks it down the field. Like, well, put him in the fourth quarter down 8, and he's going to chuck it down the field where he needs to, right? So you adjust. And again, I think that's where Dak, those fourth quarter comebacks, which he has some spectacular fourth quarter comebacks in there, but seeing a little bit more of that and more of that aggressiveness when the game dictates it, whether that's offensive coordinator driven or not, I still want to see that a little bit more.
No, I agree with you. As much as he's a great locker room guy and has all the moxie and that stuff, I could argue that he's been too passive during the game. And and that he just needs to, I mean, what's Kellen Moore going to do to him? Nothing. So if he feels like he needs to be more aggressive, go ahead.
Especially with this group of playmakers, right?
Right.
He has two legitimate number ones, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup's a very good number 2, who's going to be their third option, presumably, if they don't trade him, right? So Dallas should be like a race to 40 points every single week and say, okay, Dan Quinn, just don't give up more than 35 this week, right? Just hold it down defensively. Try to get to 40, try to get to 30 as quickly as possible.
All right, so Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com on the Modelo guest line. Now, I think that's all right, Mullen was too conservative with him, even though Dan is very, very good on offense, Steve, and we got to see all of his games and snaps and so on in college. And I think the same thing out of the chute with Linehan and Jason Garrett, and to a certain extent, Kellen Moore. I actually think that Dak needs to play more aggressive and needs to have a little bit. This is a balancing act. But in my opinion, I can't wait to get your thoughts. He needs to have a little more gunslinger in him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. And the way I always measure that is our numbers at PFF, big time throws and turnover worthy plays, right? So big time throws are when we grade on a play-by-play basis, it's the best throws you see, right? I mean, it's the best throws down the field, accurate and all that stuff. Turnover worthy plays are all those bad passes that should be picked or bad fumbles, whatever it is. And Dak's always been kind of low in both, right? And that is the conservative end of the spectrum. Now, the Dan Mullen thing, I think Dan Mullen just said, look, Dak's a really good runner. We need to run him 8 to 12 times a game. And that was a big part of it as well. And yeah, he didn't tap into the fact. I think that's why Dak surprised some people, because he was so comfortable as a drop back passing quarterback, right? Which you just didn't get to see a ton.
Yeah. Well, and he had no
college.
talent around him at Mississippi State, but that's another discussion for another day.
Nobody was getting open back
right.
then.
Right.
So yeah, I think aggressiveness is generally the way to go. The analytics community would generally say, don't overrate interceptions. Interceptions. Coaches think interceptions are like the worst thing in the world, and they're not great. Obviously, you want to have the ball. You don't want to be Jameis and turn it over 30 times. But even using Jameis as an example, in a year where he threw 30 interceptions, that was still a very efficient Bucs offense, right? They had a very efficient offense because he was aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
When he didn't turn the ball over, he moved the chains, he attacked down the field, and they moved the ball efficiently. One of the most efficient offenses in the NFL, despite 30 interceptions. So I'm not saying go be careless with the ball, but go out there, be aggressive, try to put points on the board. It should be a race to 30, right? You get to 30 points in today's NFL and do whatever you can to get there, and don't be too conservative and just trying to take care of the ball.
Okay. And I think they've been too passive with him, the Cowboys, and that in turn has made him a little too passive on the field. I sure hope now that he's a veteran, he's got the monster contract, and it's his team I think it already was, but even more so, that he can look over at Kellen Moore, or doesn't even have to, and just say, if we've got to rev it up, we've got to rev it up, and I need to be more of a gunslinger. I agree with you on your interception, too. To me, we've said this, and Mike Leach talked about it in his book years ago, but that's a 1978 mentality. When you freak out and don't let your players throw some picks, but in the greater good of grand scheme of things, it's going to be okay. Or when coaches act like it's the end of the world type deal. That, to me, that's a 1978 mentality.
Don't miss one moment of the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Weekdays 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. on ESPN 105.9. The Zone.